Let's do it. Number 10, the company that died of laziness. Imagine you're the king of an entire industry. Your kingdom is built on a simple, beautiful transaction. People drive to your castle, rent a plastic brick containing a movie, and return it a few days later. You are Blockbuster, and your reign is absolute. Your only real enemy is your customer's inability to rewind a tape. Life is good. Then, one day in the year 2000, two scrappy peasants named Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph show up at your court. They have a bizarre idea for a new fiefdom called Netflix. Their pitch? People could order DVDs online and get them by mail. No stores, no late fees. They offer to sell you their entire operation for a mere $50 million. You, King Blockbuster, laugh them out of the room. You laugh so hard your oversized popcorn spills on the sticky, carpeted floor of your throne room. Why would anyone wait for a DVD in the mail when they could experience the joy of wandering your aisles for 45 minutes, only to discover the one movie they wanted is checked out? It's preposterous. This single decision was the business equivalent of seeing a meteor in the sky and thinking it's just a weird-looking bird. The financial lesson here is that innovation isn't just about what you do, it's about what you're willing to change. Blockbuster was so high on the fumes of its own late fee revenue, which made up a staggering 16% of their income, that they couldn't see the world was moving on. They were a horse and buggy company that refused to believe the automobile was coming, even as Ford cars were honking outside their windows. While Netflix was building a high-speed data delivery empire, Blockbuster was busy trying to invent a slightly better horse. They eventually tried to launch their own streaming service, but it was too little, too late. It was like showing up to a gunfight with a spork. The company filed for bankruptcy in 2010, crushed by the very idea it had once mocked. Turns out, ignoring the future is the most expensive late fee of all. Some companies fail because they sell a bad product. Others fail because a competitor eats them alive. And then there are companies that fail so spectacularly they decide to take the entire global economy down with them, like a collapsing star pulling nearby planets into its void. Meet Lehman Brothers, the 158-year-old investment bank that in 2008 became the poster child for financial Armageddon. Imagine your grandpa, a respected town elder, suddenly betting the entire town's life savings on a three-legged horse named subprime mortgage. That's Lehman. For years, Lehman was basically a high-stakes casino that traded in things you and I can barely pronounce: mortgage-backed securities, collateralized debt obligations, credit default swaps. It sounds complicated, but the core idea was terrifyingly simple. They were buying up thousands of risky home loans, the kind you give to someone whose only collateral is a half-eaten sandwich, bundling them together and selling them off as supposedly safe investments. It was the financial equivalent of taping a bunch of broken firecrackers together and calling it a NASA-grade rocket. To make matters worse, they were doing this with borrowed money. A lot of borrowed money. Their leverage ratio was a skin-crawling 30-to-1, meaning for every $1 of their own money, they were playing with $30 of someone else's. The lesson? Leverage is a double-edged sword forged in the fires of corporate hubris. When the housing market was booming, Lehman looked like a bunch of geniuses printing money. But when housing prices started to fall in 2007, all those safe investments were suddenly revealed to be ticking time bombs of toxic debt. The firecrackers started going off. On September 15, 2008, after a weekend of frantic, failed negotiations to find a buyer, Lehman Brothers filed for the largest bankruptcy in U.S. history, with over $600 billion in assets. Its collapse vaporized pensions, froze credit markets, and triggered a global recession that felt less like a market correction and more like a biblical plague. They didn't just go bankrupt. They made bankruptcy the hottest trend of 2008. Number 8. The blood-testing unicorn that ran on lies. Picture this. You're a visionary founder. You wear a black turtleneck. You speak in a low, hypnotic voice. You promise to revolutionize healthcare with a single drop of blood. You are Elizabeth Holmes, and your company, Theranos, is the hottest startup in Silicon Valley, valued at a mind-boggling $9 billion. You've got powerful investors, a board stacked with political heavyweights, and magazine covers hailing you as the next Steve Jobs. There's just one tiny, insignificant, microscopic little problem. Your magical blood testing machine doesn't work at all. Theranos was a house of cards built on a foundation of pure, unadulterated hype. The company claimed its proprietary Edison machine could run hundreds of medical tests from a single pinprick of blood taken from a finger. It was a miracle of modern science. Except the Edison machine was mostly a black box that gave wildly inaccurate results. Behind the scenes, panicking employees were secretly running patient samples on commercially available machines from other companies, desperately trying to keep the illusion alive. It was the most expensive and dangerous game of fake it till you make it in history. The whole operation was less of a high-tech lab and more of a science fair project that had accidentally raised billions of dollars. The business lesson here is almost too obvious. Your product should probably, exist. Theranos wasn't just a failure of technology. It was a catastrophic failure of ethics and oversight. Holmes and her second-in-command, Sunny Balwani, fostered a culture of secrecy and intimidation, silencing anyone who dared to question if their unicorn was actually just a pony with a cardboard horn glued to its head. The whole thing finally imploded when a series of investigative articles from the Wall Street Journal exposed the fraud. The $9 billion valuation vanished like a fart in the wind. Holmes was eventually convicted of fraud and sentenced to over 11 years in prison. Theranos proved that if you dress like Steve Jobs and talk like a TED Talk, you can convince a lot of rich people to invest in a box of broken electronics. Number 7. The energy company powered by greed and shredded paper. Before there was Theranos, there was the final boss of corporate fraud, the one, the only, Enron. For a while, Enron wasn't just an energy company, it was the future. It was named America's Most Innovative Company by Fortune magazine for 6 straight years. Its executives were treated like rock stars, and its stock was a rocket ship that only went up. On the surface, they were trading electricity, natural gas, and broadband bandwidth. But underneath, they were trading something far more volatile: pure, uncut fiction. Enron's business model was a magic trick, a very, very illegal magic trick. Their accountants, with the help of consulting firm Arthur Andersen, practiced something called mark-to-market accounting. In simple terms, it allowed them to book potential future profits as actual, real revenue today. Imagine building a lemonade stand and declaring you've made $1 million because you project you'll one day sell lemonade to the entire planet. That's what Enron did, but with multi-billion-dollar energy contracts. To hide their mountains of debt, they created thousands of off-the-books shell companies, like a financial magician hiding rabbits in an endless supply of hats. Their financial statements were less about numbers and more about creative writing. The lesson here is a chilling one. Complexity is the best friend of fraud. Enron's schemes were so insanely complicated that almost no one, not investors, not analysts, not even some of their own employees, could understand what was actually going on. They wrapped their lies in layers of jargon and convoluted structures until the truth was buried alive. The whole thing came crashing down in 2001 when their accounting tricks could no longer hide the fact that the company was a hollowed-out husk of debt. The subsequent bankruptcy vaporized the life savings of thousands of employees, took down one of the world's biggest accounting firms with it, and led to the creation of new financial regulations. The top executives, like Ken Lay and Jeff Skilling, went from titans of industry to convicted felons. Enron taught the world that the most innovative thing a company can do is invent new and exciting ways to go to jail. Number 6. The office space for cult members. Imagine a real estate company that doesn't think it's a real estate company. Instead, it's a spiritual movement designed to elevate the world's consciousness. Its mission statement is dedicated to the energy of we, and its founder believes his ultimate goal is to become president of the world, or maybe the first trillionaire. This isn't a sci-fi novel. This was WeWork, a company that rented out office desks and somehow got valued at $47 billion. It was a glorified landlord that acted like a tech bro messiah, and its collapse was a masterclass in ego-fueled insanity. Led by its barefoot, tequila-loving guru, Adam Neumann, WeWork wasn't just selling office space, it was selling a vibe. A vibe funded by an endless fire hose of cash from investors like SoftBank, who were apparently hypnotized by Neumann's charisma. The company burned through money at a rate that would make a rock star blush. We're talking private jets, lavish parties, and buying a wave pool company for some reason. Neumann himself engaged in some truly galaxy-brained self-dealing, like trademarking the word "we" and then charging his own company nearly $6 million to use it. That's like selling the rights to your own name to your mom. The inevitable finance lesson: a good sales pitch cannot fix a fundamentally broken business model. WeWork was losing billions of dollars a year. It was a simple equation. The cost of leasing and renovating buildings was way higher than the money they made from renting out desks. When they finally tried to go public in 2019, they had to release their financial documents to the world. Investors read the S-1 filing and collectively realized they weren't looking at the next Amazon. They were looking at the business plan for a fire festival with better Wi-Fi. The IPO was canceled, the $47 billion valuation evaporated overnight, Neumann was paid over $1 billion to go away, and the company nearly went bankrupt. WeWork proved that if you add enough kombucha on tap and inspirational quotes on the walls, you can distract people from the fact you're lighting their money on fire. Number 5, the sock puppet that set money on fire. Let's take a trip back to a simpler, more chaotic time, the dot-com bubble of the late 1990s. It was an era when all you needed to get millions in funding was a .com at the end of your name and a pulse. Maybe not even the pulse. The undisputed king of this irrational exuberance was a company called Pets.com. Their business plan was revolutionary: sell pet supplies online. Their mascot was an incredibly charming and slightly annoying sock puppet. Their one fatal flaw: the entire concept was monumentally, mathematically, galactically stupid. Pets.com's strategy was to achieve brand awareness at any cost, and the cost was biblical. They spent millions on advertising, including a Super Bowl ad and a balloon in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Everyone knew the sock puppet. The problem was nobody wanted to buy from the website. Why? Because they were selling giant, heavy bags of dog food and cat litter. The shipping costs were astronomical. In many cases, the company was spending more on postage than it was making on the actual product. They were literally paying customers to take their inventory. It's like opening a restaurant where every meal costs you $50 to make and you sell it for $20, hoping you'll make it up in volume. The lesson from Pets.com is the most fundamental rule of business. Your revenue has to be bigger than your expenses. It's the one rule to rule them all. You can have the world's greatest marketing, the cutest mascot, and a revolutionary idea, but if every sale digs you deeper into a financial grave, you are not a business. You are a very complicated charity for shipping companies. After raising and burning through over $80 million in venture capital, Pets.com went from IPO to liquidation in just 268 days. It became the quintessential symbol of the dot-com crash, a testament to an era when investors cared more about eyeballs and buzzwords than, profit. Basically, the sock puppet got all the fame, and the investors got an empty bag. Not even dog food, just the bag. Number 4, the phone company that made a wrong number. Your money is feeling sad. It's sitting in a boring savings account earning a pathetic 0.1% interest. Meanwhile, in the late 90s, there was a stock that never went down, WorldCom. It was a telecommunications behemoth, second only to AT&T, gobbling up competitors like a hungry Pac-Man. Its CEO, a former milkman and motel owner named Bernie Ebbers, was hailed as a genius. He built a $180 billion empire on a simple strategy: buy everything. But when the dot-com bubble burst and the acquisition-fueled growth dried up, Bernie and his team faced a tough choice: admit the party was over, or commit fraud on a scale that would make your jaw unhinge. They chose fraud, and not even the fancy, sophisticated fraud of Enron. WorldCom's crime was brutally simple, the accounting equivalent of putting your thumb on the scale. When faced with billions in operating expenses that were cratering their profits, the CFO, Scott Sullivan, simply told his underlings to reclassify them as capital investments. This is like buying groceries for the week and telling your accountant you bought a new house. It's not just wrong, it's nonsensical. This one simple trick magically transformed billions in losses into billions in profits, fooling Wall Street and sending their stocks soaring. Between 1999 and 2002, they faked over $11 billion in earnings. The business lesson here is that a toxic corporate culture flows from the top down. Bernie Ebbers was a domineering leader who demanded good numbers no matter what. Dissent was not an option. This pressure, combined with the obscene executive compensation tied to stock performance, created a perfect storm for massive fraud. A tiny team of internal auditors finally discovered the scheme, risking their careers to expose the truth. When the news broke, WorldCom collapsed into the largest bankruptcy filing in U.S. history at the time, even bigger than Enron. Ebbers traded his cowboy boots for a prison uniform, sentenced to 25 years. WorldCom's story is a terrifying reminder that sometimes the biggest lies are the simplest ones, just written in very, very large numbers. Number 3, the $2 billion app that nobody watched. Imagine you have $1.75 billion. You could buy a private island, a fleet of supercars, or a small country. Or you could do what Hollywood mogul Jeffrey Katzenberg and tech CEO Meg Whitman did: light it all on fire to create a streaming service nobody asked for. Meet Quibi, the service whose name stood for Quick Bites and whose business plan stood for Quick Bankruptcy. Launched in April 2020, it was dead by December of the same year, making it one of the most spectacular, high-priced faceplants in modern business history. Quibi's premise was both incredibly specific and incredibly out of touch. It was a mobile-only platform for high-budget, 10-minute-long shows meant to be watched in between moments, like waiting for a coffee or riding the subway. There was just one problem. It launched during a global pandemic when nobody was going anywhere. Everyone was stuck at home with their big-screen TVs, binge-watching hours of Netflix. Trying to sell people 10-minute shows on their phones was like trying to sell a unicycle to a fish. Furthermore, you couldn't screenshot the content or share it easily, effectively preventing any show from going viral. They spent fortunes on A-list talent like Liam Hemsworth and Chrissy Teigen, but the format was so restrictive it was doomed from the start. The lesson from Quibi is a masterclass in hubris. It's a story of powerful, wealthy executives who were so convinced of their own genius that they never stopped to ask a simple question: does anyone actually want this? They spent billions creating a solution to a problem that didn't exist. They assumed people weren't watching long videos on their phones because of the length, not because YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram were already there, and they were free. Quibi was a monument to the dangers of top-down decision-making and a complete disconnect from the actual market. The service shut down after just 6 months, a speed run from launch to legacy of failure. Quibi wasn't just a quick bite, it was a quick death. Basically, capitalism is just expensive trial and error. Subscribe so you don't miss the next error.